It is 8:40. It is New Year's Eve. We have made it despite all the attempts of the world to destroy us. We're here. Remember at the beginning of the year when I did my thing about remember how they said all these things were going to happen in 2020 and they didn't happen, and one of them was, everybody said there was going to be like a global pandemic and and the world was going to end, but it didn't happen. Boy, was I wrong. Who knew? I always thought it'd be an asteroid. I am your grumpy guide to all things gaming, the OGGM. Support me, water! I need a sponsor, and I will sell out. It's time for another flashback gaming story. Great moments in my personal gaming history, because sometimes it's fun just to look back and go, wow. Especially in a year with no gaming. If you're lucky, every now and then, as a player, you can just sit back and watch another player grab that creativity torch and tell a story that just takes things in a new and bizarre way that nobody expected. And if him or her and the GM are working together and everything's growing, it can just be wow. So this is one of those stories. I was a player. It has very little to do with me. It was something else that another player at that table managed to pull off, and it was brilliant. It was not only brilliant because it was the way he played it out, but it was brilliant because he brought everybody else along with him, and nobody knew what was going on to the very end. So we have to take the way back machine all the way back to the late 90s. When I was playing D&D with TJ Storm, the 15-year-long Company of the Bull campaign, John DeRose, TJ Torm, Josh, all the others. And one of the players, an individual, was playing a male cleric. We did not know that the male cleric was a cleric of Lyra, the goddess of deception and illusion. We just knew it was a male cleric. Name Ishtar, because we were running an Egypt, Middle Eastern-based campaign, and, Ishtar was a movie about that time, and it was a vaguely, Middle Eastern, Egyptian sounding name, probably would be considered racist now, blah, whatever. So this male cleric was pretty much tagging along with us for a couple months. The player was playing with him, doing, cleric-y stuff, picking up a few odds and ends magic items. Somewhere along the way, we picked up a couple cursed magic items. This will be important later. That we just threw in the party treasure, figured we'd sell them at one point in time or whatever. So things happened. Ishtar dies. Actually, most of the party got killed. I don't remember what we were fighting. I think it was an Ogre Magi. It's a long time ago, so I don't remember all the facts. But anyways, this character, Ishtar, the cleric, dies. And he's very upset. I don't know, maybe unreasonably upset. But, it was a character he'd invested at least a year in. Felt that the death could have been avoided. Just one of those bad games. So, the next week we decided to take a break, and we played Magic, because that was becoming a thing back then. And then we restart the game the week after. He sits out like a game or two. There's obviously some type of communication going on with him and the DM, and who had what treasure, and was there a way to bring the character back. But then eventually he brings in a new character, a female magic user named Ishma. Now this should have been our first clue, but we were young and stupid and just excited to have him back at the table. So he's playing this female magic user for about 2 years. Ishma becomes a very integral part of the campaign. We're all very emotionally connected to him. Every now and then, though, we notice that he has these 2 3x5 cards with things written on them, and he occasionally passes them to the DM, and then he passes them back to her, and says make a, and none of us really knew what they wore, but we all had like secret things and, magic items and just, we're doing note passing occasionally. Nothing ever bad came out of it, so we never really thought anything about it. It's like, okay, maybe I kind of suspected he had a psychic ability and didn't want us to know about it because this was about the time that psionics were being introduced to the game or whatever, but whatever, we were just playing, we were having fun, nobody really thought anything about it. And Ishma is a very integral part of the story, and then this goes on for about 2 years of him playing this female wizard. And then, after multiple adventures, multiple spin-off campaigns, multiple character changes, multiple players coming and going, a few other deaths, the jig is revealed. Because, if you remember, Ishtar was a cleric of Lyra, goddess of deception and illusion. And if you're familiar with Forgotten Realm lore, one of Lyra's greatest deceptions was faking her own death and convincing the world she no longer existed. Ishma, the wizard that had been traveling with us for 2 years, was Ishtar. Ishtar had not died. Somehow, he had survived because he had these psionic abilities nobody knew about us. But the player decided that this was a chance to not only make us feel bad for placing us in a situation that could have been avoided, but following in the teachings of his goddess, pull off a deception. One of the cursed items we had picked up in our adventuring was a griddle of femininity, masculinity. So that's a griddle that turns women into men and men into women. Back in the old D&D days, obviously, one of the designers of D&D, original D&D, might have had some gender issues, and this was his or her way of addressing them. So he fakes his death. He puts on the griddle. He dual classes as a first level wizard and introduces the character about 4 weeks later, Ishma the wizard. Never once breaking the con. Only him and DM knew. Only him and the DM knew he had the psychic abilities. That's what the cards were. Only him and the DM knew that he had faked his death, come back, dual class as a wizard, was willing to start over at first level, used the cursed magic item to become a woman, and played that character for 2 years before it finally comes out that it was the same person. And we were all just floored that he had managed to pull this off and keep the con going and never once broke character, never once gave anybody a hint, a clue, even a smidgen that it was the same person. And then, we were all like, but I remember how upset you were. And he was just like, yes, I did it. It was brilliant. Never before and never since have I seen anybody pull that much amazing role-playing off and just running with an idea as far as they could and convincing an entire group of players, most of whom were college graduates, and who were very intimate with this individual, including the woman that he was dating at the time. That Ishtar had died. He was very upset about Ishtar's death, and then he brought in a new first level wizard named Ishma. None of us made the connection. None of us figured out for almost 2 years that they were the same person, and he had conned us all. He had lived out the tenets of his goddess's teaching by pulling off a deception, convincing everybody he died, convincing everybody this is a completely different person, never once giving a clue, and then finally the reveal, and we were all just like, oh my God, you fucking asshole. I can't believe you did that. It was brilliant. Truly a great moment. I hope you appreciate this story. If you want to see more stories like this, consider subscribing to the OGGM Adventure and help me hit 500 subs by August 4th. And Happy New Year. I will talk to you later. Way to go, dude. Way to go.